Welcome. So this morning I talked quite a bit about the relationship between the Negrido, which we can sort of, I was saying there, in a way you can understand this as just relaxing into the sort of unconscious, or or in our case, it's really because we're working with this image of the body as a vessel of the psyche. It's really just a matter of relaxing into the body fully, and this is led in a way simply by to begin with being aware of sensations. And the more we do this, the more we attend to the body, the more sensitive we'll become to the kind of energetic flows in the body. Yeah? So slowly we become more familiar with our energetic or subtle body, and also with this sort of underworld, this sort of the realm of our psyche below our normal waking consciousness. Yeah. And so in a way, the Negrido can be understood. I mean, it can be understood in lots of ways. And sometimes it might be quite dramatic, but on a more long-term basis, it's really maybe best just to be understood as relaxing into the kind of physicality and the energetics of the body. When we do this, certain material might come up into consciousness. This, well, certain material certainly will, but certain material like memory or images or this sort of thing, a bit like what happens when in that hypnagogic state between waking and sleeping. Yeah. Just, that state we get into, we're still awake, but something's relaxed, and we're no longer sort of monitoring and controlling our conscious experiences. That as if the ego has relaxed a little bit, and it's not so alert and trying to keep your limited sense of I, a sort of small self, is not so concerned with kind of keeping it together, keeping it coherent by its own standards, as it were. And then to moving into the next sort of stage is, which is the whitening or albedo, or silvering it's sometimes called. It's really finding a way for this material to come up into consciousness, but to not interfere with it. So it's sort of like a deep listening to the material. We are very attentive and interested, but we don't go on to manipulate it with our kind of, we don't rationalize it or try and understand it with our rational mind. We just let it be present, as it were. Tend to. Of course, this is very difficult, and of course, we nearly inevitably the ego will try and kind of appropriate it and make it part of the I. I don't really like this language, but I don't know what else other language to use. Make it part of our sense of I-ness, or small self, or small mind. Yeah. This is a little bit James Hillman, the archetypal psychologist, is kind of a maverick Jungian, really. And actually following Jung is one of his favorite slogans, is stay with the image, by which he means stay with this raw material. Don't try and interpret it, And you might notice this if you have a strong dream and it wakes you up, or you wake up from a strong dream, the tendency to immediately try and kind of explain it away in some way. Oh, that happened because of blah, blah, blah. You know, it's got a kind of reason. And you sort of rationalize it. And this is the attempt by the ego self to make it sort of safe, to sort of depotentialize it in a way. So the advice is, although it's very difficult advice to follow, is to try and not do that. So we find something quite close to this in the teachings of Dzogchen and Mahamudra, where they're constantly telling us not to confect. That's the word. I don't know what the word is that gets translated as confecting, which of course means putting together and making something else out of it. You know? Like we make a cake or whatever, you know. But we're trying to just let the things speak for themselves. This doesn't mean that they won't change, and they evolve under their own energy in a way. So that's the sort of beginning of this silvering, when the ego consciousness is not reacting defensively to the material, whether it's psychological or whatever. It's not reacting defensively to the material anymore. And this can take quite a long time. Or it's not kind of appropriating it. Yeah, it's not, yeah. And then the other thing that what we want to happen at some point is we actually kind of get into some dialogue. I don't necessarily mean linguistically, but we get the small mind and the kind of bigger mind come into a cooperative relationship, if that makes any sense. For this to happen, actually, at some point, the ego, the small self, has to recognize this material as more primary than itself. You know? It has to sort of move from a situation where it's trying to control our experience to a situation where it's sort of in service to this material. I hope this makes sense. It sounds a bit abstract, doesn't it, when I speak of it like this? But this would be what we'd call the albedo, or silvering. So we start to experience the material with a certain clarity, and we're not reacting to it in a defensive sort of way. I mean, examples of this is like when something happens in meditation, you start thinking, you might, maybe suddenly you're experiencing anger, for example, or you might be experiencing delight, but you're experiencing some quite strong emotion. And if it's, and then you start having this dialogue going on in your head that either, oh, this is great, or, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that, I shouldn't be feeling that, that shouldn't be happening, that's not what I'm doing. So you start judging it, and you start trying to manipulate it. Yeah. So it's a sort of radical acceptance, in a sense, trying to trust that if this material is allowed to move freely, it will do what it needs to do. We get this very strongly in the Tibetan tradition, where they talk about everything being self-liberating. It's more or less that we've just got to get out of the way, our ego sense, our I-ness, has just got to get out of the way and let things happen. But it has got a very important witnessing function, and also potentially it can learn to cooperate with. And in that sense, the ego needs to be sort of what would be the word? We need to respond with kindness to what happens. Yeah, it needs to be encouraged. Yeah, whatever it's learned to do, whatever kind of habits we've developed, it's done so in order to try and protect us. Yeah, so that they become dysfunctional over time or no longer appropriate. Our responses um, might well be the case, is very often the case, but nevertheless, it was an attempt at some point to keep us safe or sustain us in some way. Anyway, I didn't want to talk too much, so I'm going to just leave it there. I did say more about this this morning, so you can always check that out if you weren't there. Okay, so we're going to start with a very simple meditation, which the aim of this is just to really see if we can kind of activate the different sort of centers of consciousness. So I'm using this quite loosely, you know, but this idea that these different centers along the vertical axis of the spine, or just in front of the spine, a central channel, these different centers sort of hold different aspects of our psyche, or even different parts of our kind of development, or different ways in which we connect with reality or the world. You know? So we're just going to do this very simple exercise to start with, and we'll see how you do with that. Yeah. Okay, so get yourselves into your meditation postures. Make sure you're nice and comfortable, or comfortable as you can be. Myself sorted out. Maybe take one or two deeper breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, if that's helpful for you. Put a bit of weight on the out breath, so you're just energizing the body a little bit. And a couple of nice full lungfuls of air, pushing all that air out. As you do that, you can relax and begin softening the face. And just gently, very gently, just imagine pushing up the back of our head towards the ceiling, so the crown of the head becomes at the top. Just if you can, I don't know if you remember, just imagine just opening up the back of the skull a little bit, the base of the back of the skull there, as if you're just tilting the head very slightly, so kind of creating a little gap at the base of your skull. Maybe have a sense of your spine kind of hanging down from your skull through the body. So we want some sense of our spine connecting the skull to the pelvis. down the other end, just as you breathe out, try and release in the hips. The hips open a bit if you can. In the thighs, just we're trying to give the whole weight of our legs to the ground to hold. There shouldn't really be any extra weight on the leg. If there's extra weight on the leg, you're probably leaning too far forward. You can just rock a little bit on your sitting bones, perhaps to find a place where it feels like all your weight is falling down through your pelvis into the ground below you. And let's have a sense of the earth below us, even though we're probably indoors. You still have a sense it is there. Well, we're not making anything up, we're just using our imagination to experience what's actually there, the earth, which goes deep below us and spreads out into the landscape, whatever landscape we happen to be. Of course, we're sitting on this planet, in this vast solar system. Bit of space under the armpits there. Don't have the arms clamped against the side of the body. You want the to be sort of like quite open in the armpit. Some awareness in the back of your body, the sides of your body, and at the front of your body. So you start sort of feeling into this breathing body of yours, which is particularly if we manage to relax and soften, is incredibly responsive to the breath. We tend to start holding the body in ways which kind of restrict the breath as we get older. I'm sure any of you that have had a baby will remember holding a baby and how you should feel the whole body kind of breathing when you hold it. Same with a cat or something, yeah. Whole body sort of moves very loosely with the breath and very loose around the breath. I like to think of the body kind of coming into being every time we breathe in. Relaxing on the out breath. We're really trying to let the breath kind of animate us from inside and let the body enjoy breathing, let your body enjoy breathing. Blood circling there. So we're going to start with the root. You don't worry about these locations. Just try and feel into where it feels right for you. The root's right at the bottom, so it's quite easy to find. The perineum there, down there. So as we breathe in and out, we're just going to imagine, just bring our attention to the root. And we're just going to breathe in and out, being aware that center. Soft base. So just kind of breathing the root. Just do that for a couple of minutes, and we're going to move up through all of the centers in the body. Sometimes when we get to a particular center, it can feel quite charged, or it can feel quite dull. But these centers can be either excessive, there's sometimes excessive energy in them, or there's sometimes kind of depleted energy. Anyway, just breathe in the root and seeing what that feels like. Imagine that kind of subtle secondary breath into that center. The center's got quite a bit to do with our sort of fundamental relationship with the world, in a way, how comfortable we feel in the world. Nice soft face and hands, releasing legs. All of these centers have that kind of traditional sounds, colors, even animals associated with them, but we're not going to go into that. So just, if it feels like a certain color to you, that's fine. Or if you want to put a particular animal at the root, that's fine. So directly above the root, we're just going to move up a little bit to the sexual center. So this is in the side the body. It's not external with the genitals. The men, it's not but it's vertically above the root center. And just see if you can just feel into that. As I say, don't worry if you're not quite sure if you've got the right location or not. You imagine drawing up from the root, you might sort of feel like it not quite catches, but there's a little, just feel this little, it's a bit hard to describe really, but anyway, see how you get on. So just breathe in the center, just above the root center. I kind of imagine these kind of flowering off the central channel. But then moving up along the imagined central channel there until you feel that you've come to another kind of energetic center somewhere near the navel area. There's quite a lot of variation where this is located depending on what tradition we're looking at. So just see what feels right for you. According to some people, this is very much associated with early ego formation. And when you're ready, just moving up to the heart center. Done a fair bit of work with the heart center already. Moving your sort of focus up to the heart area. Just breathing the heart. I've taken to every time I find myself kind of having arguments in my head, if you know what I mean. Those kind of repetitive thoughts that seem to be fueled by some sense of being threatened in some way or other. You know, your sense of yourself being threatened in some way or other. You feel angry or jealous or whatever it is. If I find that happening in my head, I just say to myself, go back to the heart. I just try and drop back to the heart into this feeling, the heart center, sort of trying to connect with a kind of underlying energetic, emotional patterning that's prompting the ego defense mechanism there. And a recenter in the heart rather than going along with these repetitive negative loops that we all have. I like to think of the heart as a middle way these days. Talk about Buddhism being a middle way, don't they? And, I like to think of the heart as representing the middle way. So we're just getting a sense of these different senses, whether they're sort of awake, whether they're overactive, whether they're dull. We don't have to be judgmental about it. We're just trying to get a feeling for how they kind of are, you know. There's been some very interesting heart research that shows a correlation, particularly in kind of middle-aged men, for heart disease and heart attacks with kind of inability to express emotion. So moving up to the throat center. Another place where there's quite often some sort of blockage, a bit of the disconnect between heart and the higher centers. Often a bit of a constraint in the throat. Yeah. To the brow center, more or less in the middle of the brain. Finally up to the crown. And the face relaxed. Before we finish, let's just try running the awareness up from the root to the crown to the whole. Probably on the in breath as you breathe in, just imagine kind of drawing the awareness up from the root right away up to the crown. And as you breathe out, just dropping it back down to the root. If this gets reversed, just go with it. Don't worry about that. Well, we've got a little sort of circulation going on, going up from the root to crown, releasing from crown to root. You might notice areas that seem more alive or whatever. So we're just interested in what it feels like. So ideally, these centers sort of want to be both connected, particularly to the ones directly above and below them. Sort of balanced energetically, but this would just happen naturally when we pay kind awareness, and over time don't need to force it or worry about it, but just becoming more aware. Spending a little bit of time just breathing, sort of allowing the energy to circulate in this way. also encourage the body into a better alignment. Okay, just relaxing, keep the posture, just soften any effort. What's there when you stop trying to do anything? Or in your own time, just move to your resting posture for laying down. So remember, we're not trying to maintain any particular alertness. Just laying still for a little bit, recollecting yourself. Recollect yourself around the heart, as it were. If you like, for the heart to be your center, psychically, consciously speaking, at the heart of your consciousness, radiating out from your heart, in touch with all those different centers of consciousness. It would be like for the seat of our consciousness to be in the heart center. Right, when you're ready, so it's nice and gently, carefully come back to your meditation postures. Quite familiar with the transitions by now, so make them part of the practice if you can. Transition. Simple as possible. Now your heart's middle, vertical axis of your body. In many traditions, notably, particularly in the Islamic tradition, kind of mystic Islamic tradition, the heart is the organ of imagination. The himma is the way we kind of penetrate into different, gives us access to different realms, if you like, different perspectives. Receive the world, it perceives and receives, if you like, all the most vital things, perhaps beauty, love, meaning. Anyway, we're just going to have a short, just sitting, so get yourselves comfortable. I've said repeatedly, when we do this practice, we still are aware of the breath and the posture. We're not trying to use the breath in any sort of instrumental way. It's just there to give a kind of stability to being present by experience. More or less like the breath becomes a synonym for awareness itself. Things happen. Everything happens in awareness, doesn't it? When we meditate like this, it's more or less like everything happens in the breath of awareness. is a very alchemical poem in that it brings together the Nigrido and the albedo, the silvering, and the blackening. By Asthma by Gunnar Eklof. The black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. All around the image, the white silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The very metal, worn to shreds by kisses. Framed in metal, the black image, worn to shreds by kisses. The darkness, worn to shreds by kisses. The darkness in our eyes, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wished for, worn to shreds by kisses. All we never wished for, kissed and worn to shreds by kisses. All we escaped, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wished for, kissed and kissed again. Ayasna, the black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. All around the image, the white silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The very metal, worn to shreds by kisses. Framed in metal, the black image, worn to shreds by kisses. Oh, the darkness in our eyes, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wished for, worn to shreds by kisses. All we never wished for, kissed and worn to shreds by kisses. All we escaped, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wished for, kissed and kissed again. have a sense of one another before we finish. Sense of solidarity with one another. And a sense that our practice can make some difference in the world. Allow us to turn towards the world with love. Concern. Solidarity with one another and a solidarity with the world, our home. Sometimes we get a little glimpse that our psyche is not as discreet as we think it is. And actually, it matters to the world how you imagine it and imagine yourself in it. Our soul is connected to the anima mundi, the soul of the world. So whether we know it or not, we are psychically active in the world. Brings us a great kind of opportunity and responsibility. Our transformation, whatever degree we can allow it to happen, will have some effect. Kind of collective psyche. Seems that we're kind of maybe at some kind of pivotal point, could go one way or the other. Anyway, just relaxing. In a world, or aware of the world around you, sky and the earth, trees and the plants and the animals and the microbes, fungi, insects, the stars. And that you participate not only in the material world, but the psychic world as the energetic world, light. Dedicating our practice to the world, the benefit of all.